All right, get ready, because this deep dive, it's designed for you, the listener. We're going to explore 5-MeO-DMT. And not just like the basics, but like some seriously big ideas about, like what is reality even?
And we're basing this deep dive on James Orrock's book, Tryptamine Palace.
Yeah, and what makes this book so cool is it's not just, a sciencey textbook. Orrock actually talks about his own like personal experiences with 5-MeO-DMT starting as a total skeptic.
Right. Like, he really didn't buy into any of the spiritual stuff at first. He even said he disliked the word faith.
And then bam, his whole worldview just like totally shifts. He ends up believing in a formless godhead and like that the soul keeps going after death.
It's a huge change.
Huge.
And he even quotes Vladimir Nabokov.
Oh yeah, the author.
Yeah, Nabokov said, "Life is a great surprise. I do not see why death should not be an even greater one."
Wow, that's deep.
And that really resonated with Orrock, especially after his 5-MeO-DMT trips. Like, he started seeing death not as the end, but more of a transition.
So that would you say, like, what makes 5-MeO-DMT so unique? I mean, compared to, other altered states? This ability to change your perspective on these massive concepts like death and reality.
Oh, yeah, definitely a key element. But before we, get too far ahead, we should probably walk through what a typical 5-MeO-DMT experience even feels like.
Okay, good point. Didn't Orrock break that down in his book?
Yeah, he did. He makes it clear that, no two trips are the same, but there are these common threads, these things people tend to experience.
Like what? Give us the highlights.
Well, he talks about encountering this super bright white light, and then like your ego completely disappears, you lose all track of time, and then there's this feeling of being connected to, well, everything. Like the boundaries between you and everything else just melt away.
I remember he uses this really like poetic language. He talks about being dropped back off at your high point, and then this like cosmic laughter just bubbles up.
It's wild. And he makes this distinction between low doses and high doses. Low doses, it's more physical,
Oh, like you're still kind of grounded.
Exactly. But high doses, that's where things get really intense. You experience ego death, like your sense of self completely vanishes.
Okay, so here's where things get really interesting to me. 5-MeO-DMT comes from toad venom.
Toad venom. How did anyone even figure that out?
Right. Orrock actually researched that, and he couldn't find any solid evidence of, like, who discovered it first.
So we have no idea, like no ancient pipes or rituals or anything like that.
Nothing conclusive. It's this total mystery. I mean, imagine being the first person to decide, hey, I'm going to smoke this toad venom and see what happens.
That's a pretty wild thought. So we have this substance with these intense effects, and we don't even know for sure where it came from.
It's almost like a puzzle, right?
Totally. Okay, but Orrock takes it even further. He starts making these connections to, like, modern physics, specifically quantum physics, and this thing called the zero-point field. Can you explain that?
Okay, so the zero-point field, imagine this sea of energy. It's everywhere, even in empty space.
So empty space isn't actually empty. Nope, not according to quantum physics.
Wow.
And Orrock's big idea is that the zero-point field, it might be the source of like the energy and the information that he's accessing during his trips.
So he's saying it's not a hallucination, but like tapping into a real deeper level of reality.
That's the idea, and he found support for this from some physicists like Hal Puthoff and Bernard Heisch. They linked the zero-point field to things like inertia, the stability of matter, big stuff.
Okay, so we've gone from toad venom to the fundamental forces of the universe. This is a lot to take in. But why should the listener care about this? What's the point of all this?
The point is, Orrock's exploration, it suggests that maybe, just maybe, our understanding of reality, it's totally incomplete. What if things like 5-MeO-DMT, what if they let us tap into this zero-point field, this realm of pure energy? What does that mean for how we see consciousness, the universe, everything?
That's where my brain starts to melt a little bit. We need to explore this more. Let's look at how Orrock connects his 5-MeO-DMT experiences to ancient mystical traditions next.
Oh yeah, that's where it gets really interesting. Stay with us. So before we went to the break, we were talking about this zero-point field.
Yeah, and how Orrock thinks it might be like where he's getting all this energy and information from during his trips, right?
Exactly. And I think you were also curious about the connections Orrock makes between his experiences and ancient mystical traditions.
Oh, yeah, totally. You mentioned something about Tibetan, what was it, bardos?
Yeah, the bardos in Tibetan Buddhism, those are like the in-between states between death and rebirth. And Orrock finds some pretty interesting parallels with his 5-MeO-DMT experiences.
Okay, so for those of us who don't know much about bardos, can you break down some of those similarities? What kind of experiences are we talking about here?
Well, both the Bardos and 5-MeO-DMT, they seem to involve this feeling of, like, transcending time and space as we know it,
Right.
Like, the ego dissolving, encountering beings of light, experiencing a totally different reality.
So it's like 5-MeO-DMT is giving you a preview of what it's like to die and move on to another realm. That's a pretty, whoa, that's a heavy thought.
It is. And Orok, he doesn't shy away from these big questions. He even brings in this idea of Bose-Einstein condensates.
ECs?
Yeah, BECs as a possible, like, scientific explanation for what he's experiencing.
I gotta admit, I'm not familiar with those. Can you explain what they are and how they relate to 5-MeO-DMT?
Okay, so imagine like a state of matter where a bunch of atoms, instead of bouncing around, all act like one giant superatom.
Okay.
That's essentially a Bose-Einstein condensate.
So weird.
It's this weird unified state of matter.
Okay, I think I see where this is going. So how does this relate to 5-MeO-DMT?
Well, Orok's thinking is that maybe 5-MeO-DMT actually causes a BEC in the brain, leading to this like unified consciousness, that feeling of oneness that he describes.
So our brains on 5-MeO-DMT, they're able to access this like unusual state of matter.
Yeah.
And that might be why people feel this sense of unity.
That's what he's proposing.
That's a really cool idea, the brain entering a different state of matter. So we've got ancient Tibetan beliefs about the afterlife, cutting-edge physics, and these psychedelic experiences all kind of tied together.
Exactly. It's like he's weaving these threads into a bigger picture.
And he doesn't stop there. He brings up Timothy Leary, the big LSD guy from the 60s.
Yeah, Timothy Leary, what about him?
What's Orok's take on his work?
Well, he thinks that Leary, even though he was like huge in making psychedelics well known, he missed a big opportunity to integrate entheogens like 5-MeO-DMT into society as tools for understanding consciousness.
So Leary was advocating for LSD, but he didn't quite grasp the full potential of 5-MeO-DMT and other similar substances.
Yeah, that's what Orok argues. He thinks that Leary shifted his focus to technology later on and maybe missed the chance to really push for the deeper, more spiritual side of these substances.
So what does he think happened because of that? Like, how did things go differently?
Well, Orok thinks this shift led to the rise of feel-good drugs. Drugs that are more for fun and less about deep introspection and spiritual exploration.
Right.
And meanwhile, entheogens like 5-MeO-DMT, with their potential for like personal growth and insights, they kind of got left behind and demonized in many cases.
So we kind of got sidetracked. We ended up on this path of recreational drug use instead of exploring this path of deeper understanding. But what does Orok see for the future? What does he think should happen with 5-MeO-DMT and other entheogens?
He wants a new mystical tradition, one that's grounded in both personal experience and modern science. He wants us to move past rigid beliefs and be open to new ways of knowing.
That's ambitious, trying to bridge the gap between science and spirituality.
Uh-huh.
Is he saying these substances could be used as like legitimate tools for personal growth and spiritual exploration?
He seems to think so. He imagines a future where these powerful tools are respected and used responsibly, not as party drugs, but as ways to achieve deeper understanding and self-discovery.
But he's not naive about the risks, right? I mean, he talks about how 5-MeO-DMT can be really tough, even scary sometimes. He told that story about his friend who felt super guilty after a session, apologized to his family a bunch, and then, like, weeks later died in an accident.
That's right. He's very clear that 5-MeO-DMT isn't a joke. It's not a recreational drug. It can bring up intense emotions and lead to some difficult experiences.
Yeah.
He's all about responsible use, preparation, and integration.
That reminds me of another story he shared about his friend Nathan and his wife Nina. Nathan had this really profound 5-MeO-DMT experience, and, like, while he was still in that afterglow, Nina decided to try it too.
Right, and
Well, while Nina was deep in her experience, Nathan was still kind of buzzing from his trip and started acting all, erratic. He kept shouting things like, wow, and how amazing. Not exactly the kind of vibe you want around you when you're having a, spiritual experience.
oh no, definitely not. So how did Nina react to that?
It definitely affected her. She needed a lot of reassurance and comfort afterward from both Orok and her husband. Orok wonders if, like, Nathan's energy, because he was still so charged up from his own trip, somehow messed with Nina's experience.
That makes you think about the energy dynamics. It's not just about the substance, it's about the environment, the people around you, the intentions you bring into the experience.
Totally. It's a reminder that these experiences are complex. They're affected by all sorts of things. It's not like taking a pill and having a predictable reaction. There's so much more going on.
So much more.
So we've got this powerful substance, intense experiences, connections to quantum physics, ancient mystical traditions, a missed opportunity with Timothy Leary, and the importance of responsible use. Where does all this leave us? What's the main takeaway from Orrock's work?
Well, he doesn't give us easy answers. He really embraces the mystery, the unknown. But he seems to be saying that our understanding of reality, it's way more limited than we think. Like, if 5-MeO-DMT lets us experience the universe as purely mental, as he puts it, what does that mean for how we actually live our lives?
Yeah, those are some huge questions. What if consciousness is fundamental and matter is like an illusion, as some quantum physicists say?
Mm.
What does that mean for how we approach our lives, our beliefs, our sense of self?
Those are the questions Orrock wants us to think about. He's not giving us a map or a set of rules. He's encouraging us to explore, question our assumptions, and be open to the idea that reality might be far bigger and more mysterious than we can imagine.
That's a powerful message. It's like he's saying, don't take my word for it, go out and see for yourself. But he also warns us not to rush into these experiences without being prepared and having guidance.
Exactly. He knows these experiences can be incredibly insightful, they can change you, but they also come with risks and challenges. He's not saying people should just go experimenting without thinking about it. He's a big advocate for approaching 5-MeO-DMT with respect, understanding its power, and ideally having experienced guides to help.
It sounds like a journey that can be amazing and terrifying at the same time, like you're learning and being disoriented all at once.
That's what exploring the unknown is all about, right? And Orrock, in Tryptamine Palace, he's basically inviting us to come along on that exploration with him, to question what we think we know, to test our limits, and to be open to a reality that's way richer and more mysterious than we ever imagine.
And he doesn't just stick to his own stories and mystical traditions.
Mm.
He actually tries to connect those experiences to science, especially to quantum physics ideas like the zero-point field.
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting things about his book. He dives into these complex scientific ideas and tries to connect them to his own mystical experiences. He even uses the work of physicists like Hal Puthoff and Bernard Heisch, who have these really radical ideas about how everything in the universe is connected.
So he's not just describing drug trips, he's putting them in a bigger scientific and philosophical context.
Yeah.
He's looking for a way to bridge the gap between what we experience personally and what we consider objective reality.
Exactly. He's braiding together personal experience, scientific theories, and ancient wisdom to try and make sense of these profound states of consciousness he accessed through 5-MeO-DMT.
He even brings in Carl Jung, the famous psychologist who studied the unconscious.
Right. He sees a strong link between his own experiences and Jung's idea of the collective unconscious, this like well of universal archetypes and symbols that Jung thought we all share.
Yeah.
Orrock suggests that maybe 5-MeO-DMT gives us access to this collective unconscious, which would explain why there are common themes and images in these experiences across different cultures and people.
So he's saying that when we enter these altered states, we're all connecting to the same source, the same fundamental reality that links us all together.
It's an interesting interpretation, right? And it brings up some pretty big questions about who we are, how everything is connected, and whether there's a reality that goes beyond what we perceive individually.
It's a lot to process. But that's what we're all about on the deep dive, right? We take these complex ideas, these different perspectives, and we try to make sense of them in a way that's informative and entertaining.
Exactly. We're not trying to give definitive answers. We want you, the listener, to join us in this exploration.
Yes.
To think about new possibilities, to question what you believe, and to be open to the mystery at the core of existence.
So where do we go from here? What's next in this wild exploration of 5-MeO-DMT and the Tryptamine Palace?
Well, Orrock doesn't just leave us with abstract ideas and philosophy. He takes us on a very personal journey, sharing his own stories, the funny moments, the struggles, all to show us how transformative 5-MeO-DMT can be.
He's not just an observer. He's really putting himself out there, sharing his own vulnerable moments, his awe and wonder.
Yeah, and that's what makes his book so engaging. He's inviting us to connect with him as a person, to see beyond the science and the philosophy, and to get a glimpse of the power of these experiences through his own personal journey.
It's like he's saying, hey, I'm just an ordinary guy who stumbled onto something incredible. If it happened to me, it could happen to anyone.
It's a powerful idea, right? It suggests that these profound states of consciousness aren't just for mystics or spiritual gurus. Anyone who's willing to explore, ask questions, and open themselves up to the unknown can potentially experience them.
But he's careful to remind us that we need to approach these experiences with respect, preparation, and a sense of reverence, right?
Absolutely. He knows how powerful 5-MeO-DMT is, and he's not encouraging people to experiment recklessly or use it casually. He wants people to be mindful, intentional, and ideally, to have experienced guides to support them.
He's saying this isn't a game. It's a powerful tool that can unlock deep insights and change you, but it needs to be handled with care and respect.
And that's an important message to remember as we dive deeper into Orok's personal stories, his encounters with the sacred, and his journey to understand the nature of reality.
Sounds like we're just getting started. Buckle up, listeners, because this deep dive is about to get even more intense. We've covered a lot of ground with James Orok and his exploration of 5-MeO-DMT, from, his own personal transformation to these mind-blowing connections to quantum physics and those ancient mystical traditions.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting deep dive. I mean, this is some pretty out there stuff, right? But Orok, he's so curious and he's so good at bringing together different perspectives that it just pulls you in.
And he's really open about how, this isn't just some theoretical thing for him. He's had these, intensely personal, sometimes even really tough experiences with 5-MeO-DMT. He actually shares a lot of them in Tryptamine Palace, the good and the bad.
And he's honest about it, right? He doesn't pretend that 5-MeO-DMT is always easy or pleasant. He even talks about accidentally taking too much and feeling like his consciousness was being, ripped apart.
That sounds scary. He described it as being trapped in this, realm of shadows and terror. It's a good reminder that these experiences, they can be unpredictable. Even people who are experienced can run into trouble.
Yeah, it really underlines how important it is to approach 5-MeO-DMT with respect and caution. It's not something to mess around with.
He's very clear about that. It's not a recreational drug.
It's definitely not. He's also big on setting an intention, right? Like how those things can really affect the 5-MeO-DMT experience.
Yeah, for sure.
He tells the story about going to this crazy party in New Orleans called MOM's Ball. It was this wild scene, and he says he felt this, underlying sense of unease that kind of foreshadowed some of the tougher parts of his 5-MeO-DMT trips later on.
It's like the energy you bring into these experiences, the people you're with, your mental state, it all plays a role.
Exactly. It's not just about the substance itself. It's about the whole context.
And speaking of context, that reminds me of another story he tells about his friend Nathan and his wife Nina. Nathan had a really profound 5-MeO-DMT experience. And then while he was still in that afterglow, encouraged Nina to try it too.
Oh, right. What happened?
Well, while Nina was deep in her experience, Nathan was still kind of high from his trip and started acting a little strange. He kept shouting things like, "Wow!" and "How amazing!" which, not exactly what you want to hear when you're on a deep introspective journey.
Yeah, that would be distracting. So, did it affect her experience?
Oh, yeah, it definitely did.
Yeah.
She needed a lot of comfort and reassurance afterward from both Orok and Nathan. Orok even wondered if, Nathan's energy, because he was still so charged from his own trip, somehow messed with Nina's experience.
That's wild. It makes you wonder about the energetic dynamics at play during these kinds of experiences.
For sure. Orok actually compares the structure of a 5-MeO-DMT experience to Joseph Campbell's work on the hero's journey, from mythology.
Oh, interesting. How so?
He compares that feeling of being dropped back off at your high point to the hero's return from the underworld. Like they've been transformed by what they went through.
That's a cool analogy. So he's putting these experiences into a broader framework, like connecting them to these ancient myths and universal themes.
Exactly. He's weaving together all these threads, personal experiences, science, ancient wisdom, mythology, all to try and make sense of these altered states of consciousness. And then there's the spiritual side of things. He talks about experiencing a formless Godhead, a feeling of unity with everything. He even compares it to the Tibetan bardos, those in-between states after death.
Yeah, he's really open about how 5-MeO-DMT has changed his own spiritual beliefs, even though he started out as a total skeptic.
So 5-MeO-DMT gave him a glimpse of what's beyond our everyday perception.
A chance to touch the infinite, experience the interconnectedness of everything. But he's also careful to say that these experiences aren't the end goal. It's about what you do with them, how you integrate them back into your everyday life, how you live in a way that reflects what you've learned.
So it's not just about having the experience, it's about what you do afterward, how you use it to create a more meaningful life.
Exactly. And that's what he leaves us with, this challenge. How do we take these glimpses of a bigger reality and actually weave them into our lives? How do we honor the mystery, the connection, the sacredness, and let it shape our actions, our relationships, everything?
That's a really great question. And it reminds us that these experiences, as amazing as they can be, they're just the beginning. There's a whole journey of integration and figuring out what it all means.
Orok's book, Tryptamine Palace. It's not meant to be a how-to guide or set of rules. It's an invitation to explore, to ask questions, to be open to the mystery at the heart of everything.
It's a call to see the extraordinary in the everyday, to recognize that we're all connected, and to appreciate the sacredness of life.
It's a journey worth taking, even if it means pushing past your comfort zone, questioning what you believe, and embracing the unknown. Who knows what you might discover?
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of 5-MeO-DMT and Tryptamine Palace. We hope you found this exploration as fascinating as we did.
If you're intrigued by Orok's journey, we encourage you to check out his work and explore these ideas for yourself. After all, it's a personal journey of discovery.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.